How's the day, by the way, lads?
All right. Did you go brighter, Hubert, for some reason? Or?
I don't know. So when I started recording, the quality changed.
You were a ghost.
And I've been kicked out of the bedrooms, and I'm in the dining room now.
I think I'm going to be in the garage, mate, at this stage.
I was going to do that, but then it was like going to be cold in there. It was going to be like,
mate, get in
then I had to set up the table. Everything.
Get in the Corolla, bro. Just selfie it. Sort yourself with a dash cam. Man, I had to do a bingo, one of the prayer sessions, like the fellowship sessions. I was like hosting it that week, and I think at my brother's house down the road, and I thought it was gonna be a 20-minute thing there. It ended up being there for like an hour. And I'm like, oh man, I gotta take a bingo call here now. So it's like sitting in the car, the car's getting all like warm and steamy, and, like my body's getting sweaty. I'm still trying to talk. I'm like, it's so nuts.
All right, lads, it's been a while. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Banjo Pod. This pod where I guess it's for you and for us as well, where we try and level up in our careers, our relationships, parenthood, life in general. I'm Kevin with Ash and Hubert on the pod, and we've got an announcement. Hubert, you've hit it well for 9 months. You've got a new baby girl, Angela. Surprised us all. Didn't tell us. Real prick sometimes, Ash, this guy. But new baby girl, Hubert, how's it been being a girl dad? And maybe you can share as well, Ash. What's the first 14 days like as a girl dad?
Hubert, do you want to go?
Yeah, honestly,
first?
I haven't had much interaction with her. No, I'll go. Like, I think for me, at the moment, I haven't had too much interaction. She's been stuck with the mum most of the time. So it is different in that, I don't know if you found it, Ash, but man, changing diapers is very different with the girl and the boy, isn't it? It's like I find it so much easier with the boy. So I don't know what that is. But,
you know what, Jono said the same thing as well. He was like, he's like, I don't know what to do because you're just used to changing a boy the whole time. It's your first. That's a good point, actually, as a girl dad.
Yeah, that's valid. The front to back, right?
Because I made the mistake. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and I made the mistake. I think once I was changing it, and she started peeing, and I lifted her legs. That was a mistake. Because then I went back over her stomach. I was like, oh man. I was like, then I just got told off by the wife. I was like, oh man.
And at that point,
had to change everything.
Hubert handed her back to Jean.
It's a good old offload.
Pretty much.
What's it been like here, juggling the two?
Yeah, I think recently I've been more on the son, sort of taking care of him. So we become closer during this time. It's tough. I guess now I've sort of lost Jean taking care of the son, so she's taking care more of Angela. So spending more time with Daniel has been he's pushing me. So I'm close to like losing it a bit, but it's good fun.
Yeah,
good fun with him.
Any advice, Ash? I think the first thing I noticed when we had the second kid was you really have to divide and conquer. You have really no chance to take a break until both kids are asleep, that is. But a lot of dividing and conquering, and that's where your energy levels kind of get drained. Do you find that as well, Ash?
Yeah, 100%. It's the first child dealing with a sibling because they've never experienced that before. So their parents' time is split. Then, like as parents, you're trying to split like the divide and conquer. So, bedtime, bath time, everything else. Like with one kid, we like thought that was difficult. With two, you sort of like everyone's just running all the time, right? So
yeah. Lads, it's obviously been a couple of weeks. We've had a couple of different movements in there, new babies, lots of different milestones, birthday parties, events in the middle. We're now going to the new financial year. It's been a bit different. I remember sitting all in the same room at the start of the year talking about what do we think the year ahead's going to be. Just a quick question before we jump to our topics for today. what surprised you in the first 6 months of this year in terms of the world? Could be developments in tech, could be politics, could be sporting things. What's been something that surprised the both of you? Other than Hubert's baby.
Oh,
The Blues winning round 2.
Yeah, I mean, if you're looking at sports, I think the predictions we made and stuff with NRL, I think my predictions are way off. So I think that was a bit of a surprise. The Eels have been a surprise. They're rubbish this year.
That's not a surprise, mate.
Yeah, I think I said I was hoping with the top 8. I was like, mate, I think I was trying to say bottom 8 was what I was trying to probably say during that time. No, I think it's been for me, sports. It's been interesting in the sense of like countries who you sort of not expecting to exceed have exceeded. The World Cup, like to knock out Australia, like really smart decision. Like from the other countries, like if you took Australia into any sort of grand final, they generally come out on top, right? Because they've got that expertise and finesse with those types of sports. So that was really interesting to see. From a competitive point of view, there's a lot of hot young talent now, like just coming through the ranks, right? Which and I think that plus experienced, like if you have a couple of experienced players, good talent, and a good leadership area, like it just nails that whole recipe, right?
Who do you find the hottest?
anyone that can win a game, mate. Wayne Bennett so far. I just want to see what he's going to do at the Bunnies next year. His career's just been next level, I reckon. So it's been like whoever gets him as a coach, right? Like he's an absolute gun.
Yeah. I think one of the things I've found surprising, I know you guys are talking about sports, but I expected this whole inflation conversation to be kind of done and dusted. I felt like by this time we'd be talking about interest rate cuts and personally speaking, we'd all be able to plan better into the next year, but there's still a lot of uncertainty in the air that's affecting obviously employment markets, affecting economic decisions, and like all of us are kind of holding tight. Can't even plan international trips in case they hike rates on us. So that's been a big thing for us in this household anyway.
They were saying also these new, the new tax cuts that have come in, that's just going to help inflation as well. So I don't think we're going to see rate cuts for a while.
Yeah, put money back into the economy.
Yeah.
All right, let's go to topic 1 for today, lads. And before we go, I just wanted to tell you guys a bit of a surprise. We're actually live now on YouTube. So it's a little bit of a test. I think this is probably a better format if we can get our, stuff together. Saves me having to edit, lads. Doing me a favor.
It would have been good if Braden was asleep right now, but I was like, coming in every 2 seconds. I was like, mate, can you just go to sleep?
makes it real, Ash. Topic number 1, lads. We've all been auditors.
Yeah.
Hubert, yourself, and both of us have worked in the New South Wales Audit Office, auditing various parts of state gov, particularly universities. I've got fond memories of auditing Charles Sturt University with you and Wagga. Many a friendly wrestle on a driveway in a motel there. This is a report that's come out. They release a report on different streams of work every year, and the most recent reports on universities and their audits on universities. I'll go through a couple of cliff notes on the reports. I'll be honest, when I read this report, I was looking for my biggest pain point in universities at the moment, which is the whole international student dilemma. Not saying that I don't want international students, but I feel like universities gear up their programs to attract international student numbers because that's where the highest revenue is. And sure enough, I think there was a comment in here about, the highest percentage of revenues from basically UNSW, University of Sydney, rely on international students heavily for their income. But a couple of key takes. Overseas students contributed $3.4 billion in course fees to New South Wales universities in 2023. It's up $3.1 billion from the year before, obviously pandemic affected. Overseas students, there were 88,592 students in 2023. Most of these students from China, India, Nepal. Again, like I said, USyd, University of New South Wales, are highly reliant on overseas student revenue. 64% of the total overseas student revenue are from these two universities. But student visa approvals have dropped slightly over the last year and will probably drop further with all of these new things being released. Have you guys gone through this? What do you guys reckon? And how do you think it'll affect us?
It's addressing just like sort of where the market's going, right? So, and I think initially when we analysed the market, we were saying that there's like an oversupply of certain candidates, but we had a gut feel that universities were becoming more reliant on these international fees, right? And so therefore, because it's a revenue generating item, they've got a self-interest in keeping that as high as possible almost, right? So
yeah,
it almost knocked out the balance of local students going in and sort of studying. So yeah, I'm still probably seeing a bit of that. It's tough when you're competing with someone that's coming here just to study, but when it comes down to workforce as well, you're also competing, right? So it's tough. Yeah.
Hubert, what's changed from when you were auditing before universities? Did we, I guess, see as many international students back in the day? I don't know if you remember anything. I don't remember anything about the university scene back in the day. I don't know about you.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. When you questioned, I was like, I don't remember too much back then, but sort of, I remember because when I was doing UTS, I did work in one of those control entities in Search, which was focused on the overseas students. So it was still an important part of the business, but I don't think it was as important as it is now. You can see the overseas students is a lot more high percentage of the total students now these days. So it shows how much the university scene has changed in that, so like the reliance on the overseas students, and whether that's good or bad, that's up for debate. But I guess I still stick to my guns with we had this argument before with Ash where I think universities is not for everyone, and I still think it's. I think there's too much courses, too much people in universities. I think, and then that should be wind back down. Yep.
Yeah, you think even for international students that come in, there should be other pathways, like
I don't
bringing
mind
people overseas into like your TAFEs.
I guess I don't mind overseas students coming to study, but I guess you guys got a bit of control over whether they stay here or not. I think that's the issue where people are sort of using that as a method to end up living in Australia, which I think that causes issues. So, if they can close that loophole, then yeah, I guess it's not a bad thing for someone to come here and study. Why not? If we have a good education system, they should benefit as well.
Yeah. So you're saying we should build a wall?
TRUMP.
Yes.
So let's like sort of just go by that, like you like control, like people wanting to stay on, like which is valid, right? Like, I mean, if you studied here, you make some friends here, then you find out there's better opportunity here for you. Like you're saying, there should be some more rigor around how they stay. I think there should be more rigor around the types of roles they can get. But then, like, it's tough, right? Because like if you do accounting as an example, when I graduated, there was like 3 of us that actually got jobs properly, and the rest are random, like really random jobs, right? Like, because the market's really tough. So, what happens then?
What happens, Hubert?
And I think that's the issue, right? Like, no, you want to make sure the domestic students, are not left unemployed. Like, I think that's it sounds harsh saying it, but I guess you have to look after your own first. And if international people come here and taking the jobs of local students, then I don't know. They might be better, but it just sort of creates that issues later on down the track, social issues with the domestic kids. So I don't know. It's got to be a fine balance where I think if international people want to stay in Australia, we should be in the position where we can pick and choose the right candidates, like what Ash was saying, whether it be for the role, whether it be for the skills they bring. And I think that should be the ball should be in our court. Australia should be able to pick and choose who they want, and not just let everyone stay.
I'd like to see it like the opposite way around, where Aussies have a market where we're sending our grads like actively overseas to work as well. Like, I mean, I think that'd be a good counterbalance. Like, we don't seem to actively promote, hey, go to London or whatever to go and finish off your degree and work there for a couple of years and come back as part of the program. Like, we don't emphasize a lot of that sort of globalness, and I think that'd be pretty cool to have as well, because other countries then go to Australia. It's, you know, you've got all the opportunity here, no guns, which is great. You know, a lot safer than most countries. But yeah, because we've got beautiful beaches, people are good. Like, everything's really, like, generally everything's pretty good here, right, in Australia. Like, your wages are decent, even for grads. Like, you start off on pretty good coin, right? Straight away, you're not going to be on $5 an hour. So, but like, we don't promote that ever, right? Like, I went to Europe in my sort of late 20s for 2 years, but that was a great experience, right? Like, really, really good experience. So I think that should be promoted as well.
You find where we export quality is in the startup world. Like, people know they can't build basically a big unicorn here. So you kind of start here and we kind of export this talent overseas. And so the Australian economy doesn't really get to benefit from that. There's probably other industries of that as well, but that's the one that I'm seeing much more of. And obviously people go to your Middle Easts and different parts of the world to get tax kind of benefits and work in tax-free or lower tax environment. So I don't know, there's probably needs to be an incentive to attract people here as well, which there probably isn't. Like, why would, other than no guns, you come here, you're paying twice the amount you would to buy a house. There's all these different, you're taxed on everything here. You're taxed on cigarettes, you're taxed on alcohol. Like, it's really hard to come here and say, oh yeah, I'm having a better life here, despite the fact that I'm 24 hours away from my family in the other side of the world.
But it's like, generally for most people, it's a short-term gig. Like, give it a shot and then earn some coin. At least if they go back home, they can triple their currency or whatever it is, right? Like, they'll go back home usually in an advantaged state, is what I'm hoping. But like, tax is high here, right? Yeah. There's no doubt. But like, initially, if you're a student, the first thing you're not going to do is go buy a house, right? Like, a lot of people buy their house, 10, 15 years into their working sort of life, right? Like, that's how it's been structured here. And now it's later, right? Because the rental market, housing shortage, fake supply and demand.
Yeah, I mean,
just demand, really. So,
but
sorry, you go, Hubert.
No, I was just going to say that we say all this bad stuff about how it looks unfavorable to move to Sydney, but a lot of people want to move to Sydney, and that's still like the reality of it. There's still a huge demand for people to come into Sydney, even though we have just point all those negative points there. So there's still a lot of more. I think the pros still outweigh the cons, and then that's sort of the issue here.
Yeah, I mean, it's a catch-22 as well, because Sydney's already established, and that's where all the jobs are. That's where your business kind of ecosystem is. So that's technically why people are attracted towards the area here. I mean, it's good for us, right? Like, we want a plethora of talent coming here. We want people from different parts of the world to come here, and we want this city to become, if not already, the greatest city in the world. So yeah, weird digression from universities, but another thing that's hit home is this talent in the accounting profession report from the the CA. I think you guys were saying, I've just skimmed through it, but you guys were saying it's the best report you've ever read, and it thoroughly addresses the talent shortage in the market.
Yes, we want to keep our membership. Is what you're trying to say.
There's definitely some ulterior motives by whoever created this report. Firstly, I was surprised by the fact that there's a talent shortage when, I'm hearing of people putting applications out and getting 300 applications per job. Granted, it's not all 300 quality applicants, but I don't think there's a talent shortage. One of the points that it raises is around quality of talent, which we'll get to, but any outtakes from what you guys read in there?
I think it's probably like they're saying like you don't need to fully study accounting to get a job in there. I think that was their initial gap, but the reality is a lot of them come back like when you first apply for a job, it's like a graduate job, you're like, oh, you must have 10 years post-qualified experience or like some random stat, right? And you're like, oh, wow, like you must have FMCG experience at CFO level to apply for this graduate job. It's like very bespoke criteria, right? So you're just like, this is super competitive and it's just really random. So I think we've got a bunch of fresh graduates and no relevance like jobs for them. Like if you hit up the big sort of big four, mid-tier companies, there's not a heap of jobs in there. And then what do the rest do, right? Like there's thousands of graduates each year.
Yeah.
And you're going to try to hit up then commerce usually. And then if you don't do commerce, if you go into some other field or like whatever that looks like, some sales roles. I think it should be wider, that spread. I don't think they've fully investigated what the root cause of some of that stuff is, right? So, yeah. And I think people who have got siblings or friends in those industries know how to sort of work those systems a bit better, like so they can get their foot in the door quicker. Like, yeah. Hubert, what's your take on that one?
Yeah, so I saw 2 points that stood out from the report. One was basically, I think anyone who's done auditing, accounting will agree that I think auditing is a good stepping stone into accounting world. I think that sort of also talk about, people saw auditing as a good stepping stone into accounting thing. But then also the second point that stood out was, and I think it could be something bigger topic here we can talk about, is I think the issue between the generations is what's like, so people, the older generation sort of seeing the new generation as like lacking talent because they had a different view of what a good accountant is. I think that's causing issues as well, right? So they're sort of thinking the workforce is not good, but then the way they see the world is very different. So I think that sort of generation gap is showing up now in the new graduates as well.
Do you think that's like just pure work ethic? And I think we've come back to this before, like that whole quiet quitting thing, and
yes,
like sort of you got now systems and stuff that drive. Like we used to drive home like lead sheets back in Excel, right? Like they took forever sometimes, right? And like different clients that had different trial balances, like mapping stuff out, spending like half a day, like it was chaos, right?
You gave me PTSD by saying lead sheets. It brought back this memory that I didn't think I had.
Because we were in that generation where like we were like half digital, half paper. That's what I grew up with, right?
Yeah.
Like, we weren't fully digital, we weren't fully paper. Like because I was with like some older, like when I say older, like a few years older, and they're like we used to carry like suitcases of like stuff. They all had suitcases literally to go to clients to take it all their prior year work files. And then by the time I started, it was like half sort of thing. And I remember like going to the client, photocopying stuff, and then we had to like literally handwrite like page 1 of 5 or whatever that was, right? So I bought myself a stamp, so I stamped everything, and people just thought I was nuts. But I'm like, this is way more efficient than handwriting everything. Because I had my name, like the work paper reference and all that sort of stuff, and I was like straight, like wait, and people
I remember that.
Yeah, I was just like, and I'm like, well, if I'm going to write the same thing on every single page, I'll just get a stamp. And I could custom made myself a stamp, got it done. But at the time, that was considered to be innovation, right? So
we used to have a seal. Do you remember that seal, Hubert, from the audit office?
Yeah. It was like in the corridor, right?
You'd have to like seal each page.
Yeah, when there's like the final copy, right?
Yeah.
Is that with a wax seal?
It was like an imprint. No. It was like
right, cool.
Just imprinted on.
Yeah.
It was pretty good. Sorry, lots to pick apart there. One of the things that I think Hubert mentioned about auditing being a good career path. We should probably do a video, I reckon, on why audit is one of the best career paths you can take as a finance professional. Probably actually as any profession, because you really get to understand a business really quickly. You build resilience. There's all this other stuff we'll digest in a video, but I think that was a great point. The stuff that you were saying, Ash, around us being through different generations, do you think that the people going through audit profession now won't get to experience what we did in terms of building things like resilience, building things like, your stakeholder communication, because they're mostly remote? Like I look at our auditors, I've never seen them face to face. It's all, I just talk to them in a screen, and if they need something from me, it's an email. Whereas, I used to hate like our senior used to make us literally get up off our asses and go and talk to the client. And I was an introvert actually going into the audit profession, and it forced me to like start to build up my conversational skills. Do you reckon the audit generation now isn't going to get that same experience that we did?
Yeah, I think it's definitely changing. You're probably seeing more of a hybrid approach like now, I reckon. So yeah, you're right. Like some of it can be done on Teams. Sometimes you don't, see the auditors. Other times you're seeing some auditors, but they're locked away. Like how we were like always locked away in some random room when you got there, right? But I think when we were doing it, it was like you need to be in front of the client the whole time. You get to the client's office, they're like, oh, here's a random, utility closet. Go stick yourself in there for a whole week, and then you're just sitting there like awkwardly typing, right? So I think it's probably brought that balance a bit, because there's a decent amount of late nights in audit, right? Because
for sure.
you do one client, and then at night time you go and correct the review points for the
Do the
prior
other,
audit you did, like, right? So you're always playing catch up, right? Like there's not enough time to sort of go, you do the job, here's a day of review point clearing, and then you carry on to the next job. It was always like 5 days.
That's right.
While that gets reviewed for the following week, review points come in, you got to clear all your stuff out. So it was just this whole cyclical thing, right? So
yeah, that's another great skill, because you really build that multitasking ability, which I think is really not there in most people nowadays. Well, I don't think nowadays, but in general, that's kind of a skill that you really need to practice over and over and over again, and you only build that under pressure, right? So that's a great point as well. Couple of recommendations.
Did you guys have timesheets?
Sorry, go Ash.
Timesheets in audit
Yeah.
I still have a good love for timesheets.
A good love, mate. That's one of the best things I did. I enjoyed getting out of it. I hate timesheets.
Timesheets track, as in like I don't know how you're facing this right now, but like in workplaces that I've worked for after audit, only one other workplace had timesheets. While I'm not been a contractor almost, because there's contractor work like you just type in like one for your day rate or hours or whatever it is, which is nonsense. But to charge out time was the engineering company that I work for, like the professional services, 2 companies, but we had clear visibility of where people were spending time. Was it project based? Was it indirectly like corporate support overheads? Like what were they spending the time on? So when you're analyzing people's productivity, it was actually quite good, and that stuff then became chargeable out to other people. Whereas what happens now in the corporate world is a lot of people being busy on stuff which flies under the radar. We don't necessarily then track like ROI on those activities, and then we like suffer. And then we sort of come back and like, hey, what did you do last week? Trying to bridge some gaps, but that data doesn't exist, right? Like, I'm finding it extremely challenging at times, because I can't confidently say in any one client going, hey, that client is ideal because we've nailed it, and that client is not ideal because we haven't nailed it, because those bits of data don't exist right now. So that's why I genuinely like timesheets, but I get that it's a pain to fill in.
There definitely is value in it. It's one of those things, though, it needs to be set up at the start.
Yeah.
Like, it's really hard to take people through years and years without timesheets, then all of a sudden spring that on them. Like, you almost need to start again with the people. But I mean, there's merit in it. I've got a funny story with timesheets. In my first year at the audit office, I found this code called unallocated time. And, as your first year, as an 18-year-old, you kind of take the piss. I pretty much really took the piss. But I used to charge a lot of my time to unallocated time. And I remember, like, my business team leader pulling me into a room and was like, what is this time you're charging to unallocated time? I was like, oh, this is like general activity. I just thought if there's stuff that I can't really charge your client, which is generic, I can charge that. And basically, because I told all the other schoolies were doing that as well. And they had to like discontinue that code because we found this loophole. And it was considered billable as well, because it was under like this wrong category. And so there's this, that's how you kind of try and hack the system. But people will do that nowadays. And we used to do this as well. You just find your biggest client. If there's time that you can't really charge to, you'd have to put it towards your biggest client, right? Because the impact isn't seen as highly. But yeah, there's a lot of merit in time sheets. My wife hates it because it means, particularly because she's 100% billable, you're really having to catch up on your time every week to make sure that all of your time is charged. But at the end of the day, that's what gets invoiced to the customer. So that's why it's so important, and that's the same with audit as well.
I did look. I think the reality is like for professional services, it's pretty unideal. It's not ideal to have 100% billable, right? Like, because there's a lot of admin that you can do. Like, especially the more senior you get, there's a lot more admin you have to just deal with from work to work basis. So, yeah, it's rough, but there'll be some like codes for that. But it's usually sort of like we want everything to be charged out, right? So we don't want internal codes being used at all, right? So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Some key findings, if I just riff them quickly. Recommendations for university educators to incorporate more real-world examples and practical context into accounting and auditing courses. There's some weird ones. Emphasize the societal impact and broader contributions of the accounting profession. Promote for professional bodies to promote the long-term financial prospects and societal importance. Lots of stuff on societal importance. And for employees to adjust remuneration and working conditions to better align with the expectations of new grads. Any thoughts on those findings or any other findings that piqued your interest?
I'm a fan of that workplace style of more exposure in that but I think that needs to happen early up front, or if not before someone commences a course, because like we've done audit, a lot of the learnings we did from uni, what got written off is probably fair to say. Like we probably took a handful of things in, and then the rest we had to just learn on the fly on the job, right? I think that's challenging when you first get there, because when you do the audit course and then you go and actually go and do audit for real life, different.
Yeah,
very different. So I'm not sure what you guys thought of that, but yeah, like it's different systems, different processes. Like you don't get exposed to those clients. You don't know what it fully means. You sort of understand it theoretically, but until you actually go and do that job, it's nuts, right? So same with something like
100%.
tax, right? So tax law, you go through the whole thing, but like a student can just submit a tax return as a thing and like submit this. These are things now. This is how the legislation actually applies to all these items. It'd be way more practical. Way more practical.
Any other recommendations, Hubert?
No, not from my end. Something.
Hubert loves the report. Doesn't want to lose his membership. I think there should be a whole course just on how to use things like Excel, like how to become an advanced user at Excel, or how to leverage things that are being used currently in the industry. And I know that means they'd have to keep up with the evolution of, things that finance professionals are using, but that's how you keep that industry relevant and push them into the workforce. So I don't know, that's small things in there, but if they do that, then your little courses and colleges won't succeed on the side who make that a business model of theirs. So
you guys find when you did your auditing, so when you did your auditing subjects at university, because I I was working at the same time, trying to answer the questions on a logical, practical point of view. I came in the wrong university. I nearly failed audit subjects when I was in university, trying to think of from a practical point of view. Like the practice and theory is very, like what Ash was saying, that's very different. So I'm trying to answer it from a practical point of view for what I learned in the workforce. I nearly failed the subject. So,
Yeah. I think the difference as well was I remember struggling at uni because the audit risk in government was different to what they taught at unis.
Yeah,
like revenue is the biggest audit risk in what they teach, but in government's all about spend and so I really like that. That was a big shift for me trying to adapt to. But again, it gave you insight into what happens in the corporate and private world as well.
I think there still needs to be way more practical as part of the university course, right? Like you need to get that taste right up front, right? Like how the types of work, what it looks like. You do that almost in school, right? Like each year you sort of elevate up, like increase. They sort of prep you up, going, "Hey, you're going to expect this for your next year," and you sort of you disregard it for some reason, right? Like, we're like, off you go. See you later. We've got your fees. Like, thank you very much. Come back when you actually need some further education, which is relevant to your job. And you're like, wow, thanks. Thanks, guys. So, like, it's tough, right? Because like that's why a lot of people from accounting just go, I hate this. Like, we did it because everyone said it's a safe job to have. They get into it at some stage. It's really tough, really competitive, and they figure out going, this is not what I want to do. Then they go study something else or go, work somewhere else.
I saw one point. Was one point in the report where he talked about how people after they worked in the accounting field for a while, they felt dissatisfied as well. I think I read that point there somewhere in there. And I remember it was funny when I was in high school. We had this. We had to get the new telephone line put into our house, and two guys came with their little bobcats, started digging up, and they both used to be accountants, and they're looking at me going. They asked me like, what do you want to be? I said, probably accountant. They're like, don't do it. It's like, you work there for a little bit and you just want to quit. And I still went and did it, but it sort of that always stuck to me. Like, why would they leave the accounting field when after they probably worked there for 10, 20 years. Then it's like, no, I had enough. I'm going to become a labourer.
Yeah.
So,
well, it depends how your personality is built too. Like, I think if you're happy to do your 9 to 5s or you're happy to be a career journeyman, then it's the perfect profession. But those people are probably operationally inclined and they wanted to, do things away from finance. And it's really hard as accountants, and you guys have seen this, finance people going and trying to get operationally involved. You always get pushback because you guys stay in your corner. You're the accountant, you're the finance person. You can't tell me about my business. And so it's very natural for people to then go and chase that operational craving that they've got. Ash is experiencing that now.
Absolutely. Got that sales bug. But no, it's especially with audit, like you do a whole audit. I don't know if you ever came out of an audit because I never saw it getting formally signed. Like when I was doing the clients, right? You sort of do the grunt work as a grad or intermediate or senior. You just keep pushing it along, and then someone's like, "Yeah, it's completed now. It's like it's signed." You're like, "Oh, cool." There's not that. We just signed and happy days and let's celebrate this. It's just like move on to your next job, right? So you almost you sometimes don't even see the final product that you're doing, which is just a set of financial statements, which the partner signed off on saying, he's given an opinion on, really, right? Whereas if you think about a labourer, at least when they do the labor, like the guy that dug a hole, at the end of the day, he's dug a hole. He can see the hole. Then he's put a new pipe in. He's filled the hole. Now you can see the hole. So we don't. Our thing is that we've, audited a set of financial statements. It just gets lodged to ASIC or whatever it is, and off it goes, right? And it's really tough, right? Because we don't sit there because some of us just it just feels like you're just mucking around in Excel or whatever system you're working on. You're like, it's gone out the window. You're like, what just happened? A large part of that was man, there's a lot of reliance on graduate people doing their work, like the field work, and the seniors just observing, going, have they ticked and bashed the right things, right? So it's interesting perspective. Now I look at it as, the significant risk. That's why there's probably more scrutiny in that on those roles, but it's very different.
Yeah. Cereal baker analogy. I don't know if you guys have heard it. It's the baker at the back of the bakery creating all these nice cupcakes and beautiful pastries, but they never get to see the customer enjoying it. And so they just think they're creating pastries after pastries and pushing it out day after day. But if they can actually see the customer enjoying it and the impact it has on them, then all of a sudden it creates more value and more meaning to how they're creating and making those cupcakes and pastries. So that's, and I guess that's what we try and do with our teams as well, right? We try and make sure that the people that work in those roles can see that final impact of what their work is doing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Lads, that is all we have time for today. If you're running into bowl and the runner at the other side of the pitch is creeping out of the crease, do you man-cad the batsman? The right answer
Yes.
is you don't, because it's chivalry. Just like
I was waiting for
chivalry.
Hubert to comment on that.
Just right. You might warn them, which is also chivalrous, but the also chivalrous thing to do is to like and subscribe. If you got value out of this content, follow us for more conversations like this. We'll continue to go live, chat about the hottest topics in our minds. We love doing this. We love chatting about this. It's like a normal conversation we have with a couple of beers. So follow, like, subscribe. Lads, we'll catch you next time. Cheers for jumping on, and go tend to those kiddos.
See you guys.
Cheers, guys.
You guys.